Hello. I believe that we're live. My system tells me we're live, and so let us begin. I am very, very excited to have you guys here today, and I am particularly passionate about this particular topic. So welcome, welcome. And I want to acknowledge you for being here. We live in a world of constant distraction and opportunity these days. There's always something to be looking at. There's always a cute kitten video you could be watching, or some work you could be getting done, or what have you. And so I want you to know that I view your being here with me right now as important, as an investment of your time. And so I'm going to do my very best to make sure that I make that time investment well worthwhile for you, and I know that I will. Today we're talking about something that largely is probably more important than just about anything else out there on an individual basis. There's all kinds of seminars about how to make more money and how to get your business working well, or planning this and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I don't think any of that stuff really matters if you don't have your health in check. If you don't have an abundant amount of energy, it's hard to achieve very much. And if you really, is there a whole lot of point in working really, really hard and, creating a great financial cushion to retire on, but then passing away early? So I'm very passionate about this particular topic because, frankly, I have a lot of people over the 20 years that I've been what many people have referred to as a bit of a health crank. People have always said, well, Eric, what about balance? What about everything in moderation? And my answer to that is that there's clearly a lack of balance in the self-care, healthcare industry in the Western world today. There is a clear lack of balance. 1 in 3 people dying of heart disease, 1 in 3 people dying of cancer, and the rest, it's a long story. So there's clearly a lack of balance. And then everything in moderation. Let's think about that. If we want everything in moderation, does that not have to also include moderate health? Because you are what you eat. Your health is determined largely by the things that you put in or the things that you don't put in. And so if you live everything in moderation, then that means moderate health. So what does moderate health mean? That means, getting the flu once a year, maybe having some allergies from time to time, carrying a little more weight than some people would like, or a little less, having a little bit of the, 4 o'clock blues where your energy dips down, or wait a minute, does it also mean that the last 20 years of somebody's life who's been living a moderate life, that the last 20 years of their life is unbelievably financially expensive for their government if they have centralized healthcare, or for their insurance company, or for them if they don't? And does it also mean that that last 20 years is deeply unpleasant for them as well? Yes. And of course, let's not forget the human cost, the cost of that last 20 years on the people around you. And so I take this topic here quite seriously. And so I want to start off by showing you a couple of things, if I can make this work. Here we are. I want to show you this. I want to show you that what happens with WildFit, and I'm going to get into what WildFit is and what it's all about and how it works. And I'm going to give you some real tips about how you can make significant change, whether you do it with us or you do it on your own. But I want to show you before that some examples, and these are real people that if you ever want to talk to, we can probably make that happen. These are actual clients of ours, and I want to give you a sense of what their WildFit journey has been like, because I think sometimes people have arrived at a point where there's so much confusion about food, there's so much confusion about health, there's so much confusion about confusion that people really don't know what to do or where to turn to. And many people have lost faith. So what I want to do is I just want to show you a few people that have gone through our WildFit challenge and had some pretty phenomenal health turnarounds. Now, before I show you this, what I want to be very clear about is that while weight loss is a side effect of a healthy, balanced life, the WildFit challenge is not a weight loss program. So it happens to be highly effective at helping people lose weight who need to lose weight, but it's also effective at helping people gain weight when they need to gain weight. Ultimately, it's effective at helping people achieve balanced health. And of course, what happens when somebody who's carrying extra weight achieves balanced health is that that weight goes away. So let's take a look here at a couple of people. I just want to give you some examples here. I want to introduce you, first of all, to Sabina. Sabina is from Stockholm. And so these pictures are before and after, obviously, pictures. But I want to tell you something pretty clear about them, is that they are about 90 days apart, about 3 months. And this change did not take place because of some supplements or special meal plan or a huge exercise regime. In fact, in Sabina's case, I don't believe she was doing anything special from an exercise perspective. This was a dietary change in 3 months by getting her body. And by the way, Sabina is a phenomenal healer. She's extremely good at creating healing results for people in a variety of different areas. If you have any pain in your back, your legs, your neck, if you know a couple that's having a hard time conceiving, she's just really good at all that stuff. The challenge was she was having a hard time with her own balance, with her own health. And so by helping her return to a balanced nutritional life, this is the change she had in 3 months. Here's a good friend of mine, Paul Sheely. And this is kind of, I may be getting this story because I think I heard it third hand. I have to talk to him directly about it. But the way I heard this was he was getting ready to do a webinar. He's a phenomenal teacher on things like photo reading and memory and all kinds of cool stuff. And so he was getting ready to teach a webinar, and his team sent him over this picture. They're going to put it up for the webinar. And he goes, but that's not what I look like. And I guess they hadn't seen him in a little while. And of course, he'd been on WildFit, and in 3 months, he had changed dramatically. And I want you to think about, if you can just take a look at those two faces for a minute, I want you to think about the quality of life difference this is talking about. More importantly, though, I want you to think about the longevity difference that this makes. And you know, I think we're all important. I just happen to know Paul very well, and he's a deeply important person. So an extra 20 years of him here on the planet is a good thing. And I just want you to take a look at those faces and see that. And then let me introduce you to Kurt from Estonia. Kurt came to us actually originally to my business programs as a business client, and you know, was in a little bit of a crisis health-wise. And these pictures, again, I want to point out to you, they're 3 months apart. They're 3 months apart without exercise, without supplements. And so the reason I wanted to show you guys this stuff is because I want to, for some of you, I want to give you a sense of hope, because I know that a lot of people get to a place, especially if you've got a weight loss goal, that you've been like, okay, a lot of people have just given up. I mean, many of our clients come to us and they go, oh, my goal is to lose this much. But then after a few weeks, they're like, holy cow, I didn't know how easy this was. I didn't know how possible this was. Actually, the truth is, this is what I'd like to lose. And so, or what I'd like to release. And so I wanted to give you a sense of hope about that stuff. And before I get right into WildFit, I want to introduce you to an incredibly powerful superfood. Would you like to find out about that? A really fantastic superfood. In fact, not only am I going to show you this incredible superfood, I want to talk to you about superfoods in general. So here we go. Here we go. Let's show you this superfood. Now, I want to tell you that, first of all, it's made up of grasses and certain African barks, you know, from trees and stuff like that. So there you go. That's the superfood. Now, we can go a little closer in here and have a little bit more of a look at it. Here we go. There's a little bit more. It comes in a nice round ball like that. And that's exactly what it looks like when it comes out of an elephant, because it's elephant poop. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, why is elephant poop a superfood? Well, it is if you are a dung beetle. If you're a dung beetle, then elephant poop is superfood for you. You know, here you are, you're an elephant, and you can produce superfood for dung beetles. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is that the phrase, the idea, the concept of a superfood is insane to me. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but the short version is this, is that there are many superfoods out there in health food shops that have been introduced to humans for the first time in the last couple of years. A superfood can't be a food for any species until it is first a food for that species. Then maybe it can become a superfood. In other words, here's what superfoods are for you. Vegetables, fruit, lean quality proteins. Those are all superfoods for you because you're a human. Now, if you were a dung beetle, then you'd have a different issue. So let's begin. Hello, my name is Edmeades, and I'm the creator of WildFit, and I'm really glad you're here. And I want to tell you how I arrived at all these crazy notions and how I helped all these people. And it kind of works like this, that in my early 20s, I was not healthy. And I wasn't suffering any major, significant, particular disease, but I was suffering with many, many symptoms. I was at the time dealing with stomach cramps that were so debilitating that when they happened, I couldn't do anything. It wasn't even, they were so painful that walking or watching TV or anything was just, it was too painful and too distracting. And I also had throat and ear and nose and sinus infections that were so severe that for about 10 years of my life, I couldn't breathe through my own sinuses. I was constantly congested, and the only time I ever got to breathe through my own sinuses was when I used some kind of a nasal decongestant, which of course most of them are addictive, so they just kind of solve the problem for 10 minutes and then it comes back with a vengeance. And I also had really serious cystic acne that was not simply hard on my self-esteem, but it was painful. It was so bad in my neck area that it was painful to turn my head sometimes. I had headaches. I mean, I just was not a healthy person. And of course, as a result of that, I went to go and see medical professionals. Now, I want to be really clear. In a moment, it's going to sound like I'm down on medical professionals. I'm not. I believe that anybody who invested the time and the money to go out and learn to become a doctor or anybody in the medical profession did so largely because of a desire to help people. What I'm a little bit down on is the industry on the whole. I'm down on the industry that they find themselves in when they've completed their education. And so I went to go see a series of medical professionals, doctors and allergy specialists and ear, nose, throat specialists and all these people that were supposed to be helping me. And I will tell you that in 10 years, that involved lots of pills. It involved even injections and different types of creams for my face and inhalants for my lungs and my nose. I mean, I tried all this stuff. I was like a chemical testing bank, and nothing worked. Nothing worked. I mean, every now and again, something would work very temporarily. Like, oh yeah, I remember they gave me this pill. They said, take this pill and it will, help you with all your acne and get all the blemishes to go away. And I'm like, great, give me the pill. I'm 17 years old and I have acne and it's kind of messing with my dating scene here. Let's have the pill, right? So what did I do? I got in, I started taking the pill, and lo and behold, a couple of weeks go by and my face starts clearing up. And I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. And so, all right, great, that's perfect, except for one problem. As soon as I stopped taking the pill, it all came back again. And so what was the deal? The deal was I supposed to just stay on the pill? Well, let me tell you about this pill. It's called Accutane. And there's two things that are very interesting about Accutane. The one is that they tell you that if you're on Accutane, you must use at least 2 forms of birth control, because accidental pregnancy while you're on Accutane is so terrible that you must abort, which must be difficult in those places where it's illegal, but you must abort. They say if you get pregnant, if either you or your partner, depending on your sex, gets pregnant while one of you is on Accutane, you must. That's how weird this stuff is. That's the first thing to know. That's what I was putting in my body. Then the second thing to know is that you are not allowed to have dairy products while you're on Accutane, because Accutane raises your acidity levels, and so do dairy products. So between the two, if you took them together, I suppose you'd get an ulcer or something like that. And so, of course, when the pills were finished, I went back to taking dairy products, and boom, the problem came back. 10 years, doctors, specialists, pills, injections, no change. And then one day, a friend of mine dragged me to a seminar, convinced me to go and see a seminar. In fact, the seminar was, some of you guys will be familiar with Tony Robbins. And I went off to go see this seminar. And at the seminar, Tony talked about a whole lot of stuff, really cool, great things that had a big impact on my life. None so much as the little bonus session we did on the following Monday. And that was just a little 3-hour bonus session on some ideas about food. And I decided to try out some of these ideas. And over the next 30 days, my life would change so dramatically that it would blow my mind. Like over the next 30 days, my first thing is I lost about 35 pounds, 15 kilos for those of you who are in the kilo world. And that was a significant deal because I did not look particularly overweight, but I also didn't look particularly good. And then on top of that, after about 2 weeks, I noticed that I didn't have any new acne. I only had old acne. And the other thing is, after 2 weeks, I woke up one morning and I breathed in through my own sinuses for the first time in I don't know how long. And I want you to think about this. If you've ever had a flu or a cold, and the first time, you know how it is, like you get that, you're all congested, right? And you're all congested, and then you start to wonder if it's even worth living. Have you ever had that? Well, I lived like that for a long, long time. And then one morning I woke up and breathed through my nose, and if you remember what it's like after a few days of not, it's kind of sore, like sensitive, like the air is cold against your sinuses. It hurt. When I breathed in through my nose, my eyes started to water, but I was not upset at all. I was like, oh my God, I'd forgotten what it was like to breathe through my own sinuses without some spray up there, and all these things changed in my life. And I'll never forget, because about a month and a half after I made these changes, I went to a friend's house. I went to my friend Carrie's house, and she made apple pie and ice cream. And I didn't want to be rude, right? I didn't want to be rude. Now, this is kind of a funny thing, right? Because you see, if she had made, say, eggplant pie, I don't like eggplant. If she'd made eggplant pie, I'm pretty sure I would have been perfectly happy to be rude about it. But she made apple pie and Haagen-Dazs ice cream. I didn't want to be rude. Let's be honest. When we don't want to be rude, it's largely because we want the food, right? So I guess I wanted it. So I ate this apple pie and ice cream, and within 20 minutes, I got stomach pains. I'd forgotten that I used to have those stomach pains. I got stomach pains so severe that I couldn't think. It blew my mind. And over the next couple of months, as I considered my life with these massive health changes, as I considered how much more energy I had, as I considered what it was like to be symptom-free, I became deeply curious. And here's why. Because a few weeks before this, I had booked an appointment with a specialist because they had told me that the root of most of my problems, at least relative to my ear, nose, and throat issues, were my tonsils. They were the problem. And so my tonsils had to be taken out. Okay, all right, hey, you've got the clipboard and the stethoscope, so you tell me they gotta come out, they're coming out. And so I agreed to have the surgery. And then after I turned my health around, I did not have throat infections anymore. I did not have sinus problems anymore. And so they called me up and they said, hey, you know, you're coming in for the surgery in a couple of days, so here's some things you need to know about getting ready for surgery. And I said, whoa, hold on a minute. I'm not coming in for the surgery. And they said, I'm sorry, what? I said, no, it's all fine. It's all taken care of. And they go, no, now, Eric, don't you worry. A lot of people are nervous about surgery. I said, I'm not nervous. I'm cured. And they're like, no, the symptoms have simply abated for a time. They'll be back. I swear, I felt like I was talking to a used car salesman that was trying to get me to keep a lemon. Like, they didn't care how I changed it. They didn't want to do an exam first to see if what I was saying was true. Let me be really clear. A few weeks before, when I agreed to do the surgery, the specialist looked down my throat, and the look on his face told the whole story. He looked down and he saw golf ball-sized tonsils that were bleeding in my throat. I was so infected. And he said, you got to have those things out. And I'm like, yes, I agree. But now that I'm telling him it's cured, now that I'm not in pain, none of them are curious to say, well, why don't you come in and have a look and we'll just see if it's really cured. No, all they want to do is make sure we still have the surgery because they don't want to lose the sale. Now, this may sound a little jaded to you, but I will tell you that the entire industry is changing. And here's my perfect example of it changing is that not too long ago, I had to have my wisdom teeth out. And we can have a long conversation about the evolutionary reason that we need to have our wisdom teeth out, but there's a very good reason for it. Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of surgery, but we did get those extra teeth for a reason. And so if we don't lose teeth in our mouth, or if we do lose teeth and we put false teeth in, then these teeth overcrowd and they're gonna, they can get impacted and we have to have them out. So I go see this oral surgeon. And he says, okay, we'll take 2 out now and we'll take 2 out in a few weeks. And I said, you clearly don't understand my speaking schedule. I'm in a different city every few days. I have a few days, we can do it right now. We have to do all 4 of them. And this was in California. So of course, the United States of litigation. So I had to sign like a release so I could do all of the wisdom teeth at one go. And I went in and they did the surgery. And then at the end of the surgery, he comes up and he goes, here's your prescriptions. Here they are. And I go, what are they for? And he says, this one's for antibiotics and this one's the painkiller. And I said, I'm fine. Thank you. And he goes, what do you mean you're fine? And I said, I'm all right. And he goes, no, you're all right with the pain right now because you have a local anesthetic. When it wears off, you're going to be in a hell level of pain. And so you don't, you want to have these pills. And I said, no, I don't take those. I'm not into pills. I'm not into drugs. So no, thank you. And he goes, all right, humor me and take the prescription with you because if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're in terrible pain, at least you'll have the prescription and you can go get the pills. I said, fine. I took them. And then he goes, and here's the antibiotics. And I said, no, I don't need those either. And he goes, well, what about infection? And I said, excuse me, do I currently have an infection? And he says, well, no. And I go, well, then I don't need the antibiotics. And he goes, yeah, but you just had the surgery. And I go, did you wash your hands? Did you clean the scalpel? Did you clean was everything sterilized? He goes, yeah. I go, well, then I'm fine. And he goes, no, you should take them. And I go, look, I'll humor you again. I'll take the prescription and I'll keep an eye on it. And if it starts getting red or inflamed, I'll consider taking the antibiotics. Is that fair? He goes, all right. So in the meantime, I leave. I never fill either prescription. I went to work the next day. I owned a company in California at the time. I went to work that afternoon, in fact. That was on a Thursday, and then I went to work all day Friday. Yes, I talked a little bit funny because I had cotton in here, but I was fine. The pain was very manageable. Everything was okay. And a week later, I went for my post-op exam. I walked into his office, and as I arrived in his office for the post-op exam, I sat down in the chair, And he looked at me and he remembered me. I was the weird one, right? And he and I had talked a little bit about my beliefs about the medical profession and drugs and this kind of stuff. So he goes, oh, it's that guy again. And we come in and we sit down, I open up and he looks into my throat, into my teeth, into my mouth, and he says, when were you here? And I said, a week ago. And he goes, no. I go, what do you mean, no? I know my travel schedule very well. I was here a week ago. And he says, that can't be right. And he picks up the clipboard and he starts looking at the clipboard, right? He's like paying, you know, and he goes, yeah, you were here a week ago. And I go, what's the problem? And he goes, well, I've been doing this for over 10 years and I know the exact healing pattern. I know exactly how they heal after the surgery. And you've healed by 3 weeks and you've only been a week. And he says, I want to know how you did that. Now, consider how different that is from the doctor 20 years ago. The doctor 20 years ago, all they were doing is, hey, you got to come have the surgery. The first question this guy asked me was, how did you do that? And so I told him how I did it. I shared with him some of the principles of a WildFit, which, as I understand it, he now shares with his clients so that they can prep for surgery and heal more quickly. And that's what I want to share with you today. The distinctions that I gathered came about because of this curiosity that I had. I had this incredible curiosity about how I could spend 10 years visiting doctors and get no results, and then I could make a few small changes in my diet and get all the results. And so now, here's where things get pretty cool, right? Because sometimes, you know, let's remember, there was no Google back then. It wasn't like I could take my curiosity and just put it in Google and come up with an answer. There was no Google. And so I didn't have a way of coming up with the answer. But what I had was my life, and I went on with my life living well and with this burning curiosity. And anytime I saw an article about health or, you know, that kind of stuff, I'd read it, but I wasn't finding answers anywhere. And then a few different things kind of came together to arrive at the birth of this concept of WildFit. The one was that it turned out that my father's grandfather had discovered the oldest Homo sapien or Homo sapiens archaic skull in the history of Earth, a 259,000-year-old skull. So I started becoming really fascinated with Middle Stone Age Africa. Now, this may not seem like it's related to any of these things, but I was really fascinated by it. I even enrolled in an archaeology program at the University of Bristol in England. I was reading all kinds of books. I was really fascinated by the topic. And then I also have been doing wildlife photography since I was about 12 years old and traveling to Africa frequently, where I was originally born, and going to the Kruger National Park and other game reserves and taking pictures. So I get on a plane, I'm headed down to Africa, and I'm taking some photographs. And what's really interesting is that I am reading an article about elephants. And they're speaking of elephants and superfood, right? But I'm reading this article about elephants, and they say, you know what, when elephants are put into captivity, this is like 100 years ago, when they were first put into captivity, they would only live 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 years. But the zoo and circus owners weren't so worried about that because they got their money back within that time. Their return on investment was still good. They paid X for the elephant, they got 10 years out of it, and they didn't know they were supposed to live longer, so it was a good investment. But then, as people started studying nature more and beginning to realize that in the wild, elephants could live like 70 or 80 years, all the zoo and circus owners became deeply concerned about their profit and loss statements. I mean, I'd like to think they were concerned about their elephants too, but you know, here's this opportunity to get significantly more profit out of every elephant. And so the article went on to describe the difference between captive elephants and wild elephants. And this is where it got kind of interesting, because in the article, the writer, the author, kept referring to the elephant's captive diet and the elephant's wild diet. And the grammarian in me, the language person in me, thought, that's not right. It's not the elephant's wild diet, it's the elephant's diet, right? Like, yeah, they have the captive diet, but in the wild, it's their diet. It's not the wild diet, it's the way elephants are. And I kind of, like, I wanted to get my red pen out and circle all the mistakes, because I thought, this is grammatically wrong. He shouldn't be calling it the elephant's wild diet, he should be calling it the elephant's diet. There is no wild diet, there's the species diet. And suddenly, I had this epiphany. And the epiphany was that the word diet does not mean temporary alteration to your eating patterns so that you can fit into that outfit for that special occasion. That is not what it means. Diet means lifestyle. Every species on Earth has one. Every species. The elephant has a diet. It eats, 70 kilograms of grass and bark every day, and it drinks 200 liters of water. And if you don't let it do those things, it'll get sick. And chimpanzees have a diet, and leafcutter ants have a diet. Every organism has a diet. And here's where it gets interesting. The closer they adhere to that diet, the healthier they are. And the more they veer from that diet, the less healthy they are, like the captive elephants versus the wild elephants. And so then that brought up an interesting question. which species on Earth suffers with the most disease of all species? Oh, we do. I mean, we're supposed to be the smart ones, right? But we have more disease than any other species on Earth. And the species that follow us in this wonderful race toward disease, household pets, livestock, zoo animals. I mean, the closer they are to us, the sicker they are, because we mess with their diet like we messed with ours. And this is the point in time where I stumbled upon an article, or paper I should say, that was written in about 1985. And it was written by a guy named Boyd Eaton, I believe was his name. And he postulated that there was a human diet, and maybe he's kind of like the grandfather of what I might call the nutritional anthropology movement. He was certainly the stimulant for Lauren Cordain's development of the paleo diet. But I read this paper and suddenly I got it. And so I wrote this essay called The Human Diet. And I started to become really fascinated with this idea that if we could somehow go back and see how we evolved, I mean, if our species and our species ancestors, if upright us have been around for 5 or 6 million years, what I wanted to know is how did we live for most of that 5 or 6 million years before we introduced new things? And I wanted to know, what are those new things we introduced? And what was the impact upon our species when we introduced those new things? And you know, it turned out that as we began introducing new things about 15,000 years ago, new things like wheat, new things like dairy products, like, you know, cheese and milk, we immediately started to see the increase or even the beginnings of things like bone disease and other issues like that. Like it's absolutely clear that when we made this change, we started changing our quality of life. And here's the weird irony of it, of course, is that wheat gave our species a huge advantage, because all of a sudden we could store food. So when the seasons got tough on us, we still had calories saved so people wouldn't starve. And also it was okay for them to be sick for a week or two, because hell, there's food stored. Whereas if you're a hunter-gatherer bushman and you're sick for a couple of weeks, it's a bad deal for you because you're probably gonna die. Whereas now we could store food. So at the same time, we introduced a series of foods that first of all allowed us to be sick, made us get sick, but equally allowed our populations to explode, because we didn't have to be so effective at attaining food all the time because we could just store it. And so we stumble upon something called the human diet, the recognition that there is a human diet. But the question is, how do we determine what it is? Because it's not like with the elephants where we can just go out and seed elephants in the wild, right? I mean, it's not like that, is it? Only it turns out that it kind of is. Because there are still, for the time being, it's just about over, I'm sure, but there are still some people living in Africa in a version of life that is as close to the way our species evolved as you could ever get. And any of you who have seen the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy will have seen Macomb Bushmen. These guys are incredible people, phenomenal hunters, and you know, lean and effective, and they understand nature. And then there's another group of Bushmen in Tanzania called the Hadza Bushmen. And I've had the opportunity on numerous occasions to go and stay with the Hadza Bushmen, to look at them, to examine their culture, to take a look at the way they eat and the way they hunt and the types of food that they're consuming and so forth, so that we've been able to get to a place where we really begin to understand a lot more about what our history might have been like. And so here's the thing, it's not that shocking. What I mean is that we already know what to eat more of. I mean, you guys already know what to eat more of. And by the way, before I get into this question, what I want to tell you is that we run on about a 60-second delay when we use these Google Hangouts. So if you have questions, you want to type them sooner than later, because a lot of times what will happen is there'll be all these questions, but they'll come in after the webinar's over. So there is a chat area, and I may have some time at the end to take some questions, so please feel free to put them in there. But even when I'm working like with a live audience, we could say, hey, what should people be eating more of, right? Well, we already know. We should be eating more veggies. I mean, it's really clear we should be eating more veggies. We should probably be eating more fresh fruit. And we should be eating quality proteins. We should be eating high quality proteins. And of course, we should be taking in a great deal of water. We should be taking in a great deal of water. We know this. You know this right now. You know that you should probably eat a few more vegetables. You know that a little more fruit, or at least we can talk a little bit about the schedule of fruit, but that fruit is healthy And we know that we should be eating some quality proteins. For some of you, the idea of what quality proteins are might be different. For some of you, it might be, some organic meat or, wild caught fish. And for some of you, it might be some combination of beans and nuts if you're more in the vegan camp. But we know we need to have those. And we know that we need to have a lot of water and we need air. We know we need these things. And we know what we should avoid, right? We know we should be avoiding refined sugar. We know we should be avoiding heavy fats or trans fats and the bad quality fats. We know we should be avoiding chemicals and pesticides and artificial colorings and flavorants. We know all of this. Here's what really shocked me. What really shocked me was I realized that I knew a lot of this stuff already, but that I had not been following it until I was inspired to follow it. And I looked around at the people that I knew, and they knew this as well. They knew more of this and less of the other stuff. They knew this, but they weren't doing it. And I started thinking to myself, why is that? Why are they not doing it? And it occurred to me that there are some pretty good reasons they're not doing it. And among those reasons are that we have a multitude of reasons for eating. And there's not one reason for eating. There's a ton of reasons for eating. In fact, in WildFit, we have a concept that we call the 6 human hungers. And what these hungers do is they identify for us what, let me see if I can find them here for you. I hadn't planned to show them, but if I can, I'll tell you what, I don't have them on this machine. So go to my Facebook profile. I will post it right after this webinar on my Facebook profile. But there are the 6 human hungers of WildFit. And what each of them does is identify for you the reason or motivation possibly for eating. And here's what's really fascinating. Once you know why you're eating something, it changes the rules a lot. Let me give you a really good example. One of the 6 human hungers is thirst. It's thirst, but it communicates in the body as hunger. Here's why. In nature, it's not like we have taps that we can just turn on and run water. It doesn't work like that. In other words, we have to have other water sources. And remember, for a huge part of our history, we would not have had containers to go collect water and bring it back. So we would have had water when we were near a water source, but when we were out, hunting and gathering or traveling, we wouldn't have had that. A huge amount of the water that we ingested came from the food that we ate. Remember, we weren't eating bags of chips or canned foods. We were eating lots of fruits and vegetables, so there was a ton of water in it. So when somebody became a little dehydrated, the body sends a message, and the message is, eat something, because there'll be water in it. You see, does this make sense? It says eat something because there'll be water in it. The challenge we have today is the vast majority of the food that we eat today doesn't have water in it, or has an infinitesimally small amount of water in it. So here's what happens. Person gets a little dehydrated. The body sends the original shopping list. Hey, go eat. We're low on water. And so the person goes and eats, and then they eat something high in salt, high in fat, and low in water. And so now the body has to use more of its internal water to process this food that just came in, and now it's even more dehydrated. So what does it say? It says, eat again. There are 6 of these human hungers. And when you really begin to understand them, when you really begin to understand why they motivate you to eat, you get to get control of them. And so here's the thing that we discovered. Anyone can make short-term change in their diet through willpower. Just about anybody. There's a few people that feel they can't, but I'm telling you, anybody can create short-term change with willpower alone, but it won't last. And that's why the entire diet industry is full of statistics like that the average person gains 3 pounds or 1.5 kilos every time they go on a diet. They go on a diet to lose weight. They maybe do lose a little bit of weight, but then they rebel. Their willpower rebels. You see, willpower is not something you either have or don't have. Willpower is something that is either in the hands of the angel or it's in the hands of the devil on your shoulder, the food angel and the food devil, right? So what happens is one day you get inspired and you go, oh, I have that wedding to prepare for, or summer's coming and I want to look good in my bikini. I always want to look good in my bikini, right? So what happens is at that point, you have enough leverage, you hand the willpower over to the angel, and the angel says, I have the willpower. No, we will not eat that. No, we will not eat that. And that goes on for a period of time until a certain point, maybe a certain goal is reached or not reached, or a special occasion comes along, or some life event interrupts life, and all of a sudden the willpower gets handed over to the other guy, and the other guy goes, yes, we are eating that, and yes, we are eating that. And you know why? Because we can, because nobody can tell us what to do. That's right, we're in control, we have freedom. And so they rebel. And that's why a lot of people will go into this cyclical pattern of gaining and losing and gaining and losing. And so what we recognize is, in order to help people create lasting change, what we were actually going to have to do is help them not want that stuff anymore. And I know for many of you that are watching this, that's almost an impossible concept. And I don't even like mentioning it during our webinars, because immediately people go, no, I don't see how that can happen. But I know, because this is a very special webinar, because the vast majority of you that are on this webinar, we did not advertise it, we didn't publicize it. It was all our clients that did this webinar. In fact, mostly it was coaches that we currently have that are in a certification training, and they're getting ready to teach their very first classes. And so many of them invited you so you could find out more about this, so that you'd have the opportunity to experience their class with them. And so I know that you've had a chance to talk with them, and I know that in some cases where they've had dramatic physical results that you can see, you know that it worked. Well, I'm telling you that one of the reasons that it works is because they stop wanting many of the things that they used to not have control over. I had a client once tell me, he says, Eric, I'm not really willing to go on any kind of a diet program because I love my freedom. And I said, really, you love your freedom? And he says, yes. His name is Frederick. And he says, I love my freedom. I can eat whatever I want. I love living like that. I don't mind if I've got a little extra weight on. And I said, do you have kids? And he goes, yes. And I said, well, I mean, do you want to be around for a lot of their life? because by the way, this guy was roughly about my age, and he was carrying about an extra 15 kilos, actually maybe a bit more. And just to put this in perspective for you, obesity is not like out here, right? Obesity is about here on me. If I were obese, it would only take being out to here on my belly, if you can see the picture. And I want to give you a very interesting thing. I said to my wife one day, I said, wow, I read this study that said that if you are obese, which is really not very much weight over the normal weight, if you're obese, it's 7 times more dangerous than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And I said this to her, and she goes, no, that can't be right. I mean, a pack of cigarettes a day and a little bit of extra weight, that can't be right. And then I said, no. And then I also read that the average American eats 154 pounds, 75 kilograms of sugar every year. Sugar! Or corn syrup or some substitute. But the point is, I told her this, and she goes, no, those numbers just don't seem right to me. She always fact checks my writing and that kind of stuff, so she wanted to fact check this. Well, as it turned out, about 2 weeks later, I was speaking at an event in London, England, and I had to follow President Bill Clinton. And I know he's not the president anymore, but it's an American tradition that they keep calling him president after they were the president, so I thought I'd explain. So I'm sitting, getting ready to go on stage, and there's President Clinton up on the stage, and he says with that, I can't do his accent properly, but he says, and you know what? If you're a little bit on the fat side, a little bit obese, then you're talking about it's 7 times more dangerous than smoking. And then he goes, and you know, let me tell you something else. The average American eats 154 pounds of sugar in a year, and Elise goes, oh my God, it was true. She had to hear it from him. So anyway, the fact is that just that little bit of weight makes a massive difference. And I pointed this out to Frederick, and he goes, well, okay, you know, the truth is it would be nice to make a change. But he goes, but I just like my freedom. And I said, okay, let's examine your freedom for a minute. Let's examine your freedom properly. Can you not eat what you don't want to eat? And he goes, what? What do you mean? And I go, well, you walk into a room and there's a bunch of, you know, cookies or muffins or something like that at a conference, and it's sitting there and it's free, and you don't really want to have it because you'd like to lose a little bit of weight. Can you not eat them? He says, no, I can't not eat them. If they're there, I'm going to eat them. And I go, okay. And then you go to over a friend's house, and they've ordered like a huge double cheese pizza with all kinds of, you know, fatty meats and heavy salts and the wheat and you've got all this stuff there, and you know it's not going to help you with and you've decided that you kind of want to not eat it. Can you go to their house and can you smell that pizza and not eat it? No, I can't. And I said, so where's your freedom? Because the fact is you have zero freedom if you can't not eat things. If they're in front of you and you can't not do it, or it takes a huge amount of willpower for you to not do it, that's not freedom. Eating it is not freedom if you didn't want to eat it. And not eating it, but regretting that you can't eat it, that's not freedom either. Freedom is when you look at it and don't even see it as food, or when you look at it and you don't even have a desire for it. And that's what we do for our clients. We change their associations, and it's unbelievably powerful. And we do this through a number of different ways. One of the ways is the way that I would recommend to most of you, but I'll give you a bunch of different options. So first, I want to tell you how you can do this for yourself. And I want to tell you how you can do this for yourself, because my starting of WildFit was not to build this massive financial empire. I mean, we do well enough as it is, but the real issue here is that I believe this is one of the most important topics on earth today. You know, we could talk about universal healthcare and the cost of healthcare for a country. You know why healthcare costs as much as it does? Let me give you one example. I could give you hundreds, but I'm going to give you one for the sake of brevity. In the 70s, there were almost no children, there were almost no teens dealing with type 2 diabetes in the United States, almost none. In fact, type 2 diabetes back then was called adult onset diabetes. In other words, type 1 was the kind that you already had, and then type 2 was the kind that you got when you were an adult, because adults occasionally get diabetes. That was the 70s. Now we don't call it adult onset diabetes anymore because kids are getting it. In fact, I read recently that as many as 20 million children and teenagers in the United States are either diabetic or within a hair of diabetes. 20 million. That's why healthcare is costing so much. Oh, and if you're on your high horse in your beautiful Northern European country, where I know many of you are from, don't think for a minute that it's not coming your way. Because this whole thing is happening. Like, I grew up in Canada, I moved to England. When I moved to England in the early, let me think about this, in the mid-90s, there were not very many people that were heavily overweight. There weren't. And over the 10 years that I lived there, the entire country grew. Not the land mass, you understand, the population. And not the number of people, you understand, the people. The people grew while I lived there. I watched it. And then over the last 5, 6, 7 years that I've been traveling around Scandinavia, I've been watching the same thing happen there. As McDonald's, as Burger King, as sugar, as American food manufacturers spreads around the world. Oh, and by the way, they have to spread outside the world because it's starting to get rejected in America. I don't know if you've seen this, but McDonald's is in serious economic trouble. So what are they going to do? Expand into countries where people haven't caught on yet. This battle, this food revolution that we're in, is one of the most important quality of life and economic battles on earth today. And so as much as I'd love you to come and do our programs, I want you to make the change one way or the other. So here's the absolute key. This is the main issue. You focus your diet on these things before you even worry about cutting anything else out. One of the principles of WildFit is very simple. Actually, before I tell it to you, I'll ask you the question. And the question is, what do you think is more important? Cutting out the bad stuff or getting enough of the good stuff? What do you think is more important? You know, very often when I have a live audience with me, I get the answer right back. And most people think you got to cut out the bad stuff because that's the focus of the industry. Everybody's going, cut this out, don't eat that, cut this out, don't have that, a little bit less of this, none of that. It's all negative. It's all no, no, no. And what I want to suggest to you is, let's say we take a person and we put them on the perfect human diet. They get everything they're supposed to get, perfect. But we extract vitamin C from everything they're eating. So they're getting everything they should get, and they're getting no toxins, no poisons, no food coloring, no chemicals, no GMO. It's all human diet, but we remove the vitamin C. What's going to happen? They're going to get sick. That's what's going to happen. They're going to get skin problems, they're going to get scurvy, and long enough, and they'll die from it. Because what is far more important than eliminating the bad stuff is getting enough of the good stuff. Your body has nutritional requirements. And for the vast majority of people living in the Western world, the only nutritional requirement that we are good at facilitating is the need for calories. And calories are the tiniest thing that we need compared to the vitamins and the minerals and the building blocks that our bodies need to build, to rebuild, to support the immune system, to cleanse itself. I mean, we need those things. Calories are a small piece of the equation. And that's why right now in the Western world, we have an entire huge food problem. And that is that the vast majority of the population is overfed and undernourished. They get too many calories and not enough nutrients. And so don't worry about cutting stuff out. What I will tell you, if you want to make a big change, just double all this in your life. Just double that. Just find, and I don't mean just in quantity, I mean in variety. Like vegetables, how many different plant species do you eat in a year? Think about it. How many different types of plants do you eat in a year? You know, let's say you have some apples, some bananas, some spinach, some lettuce. Maybe there's some celery, some red peppers, some tomatoes. What else? Come on, rhubarb. Anybody? Oh no, it's not common enough. What else? What I'm going to get here is that the best of the average people are eating 10, 15 different vegetables a year, fruits and vegetables a year. And most of them are on a pizza or on a hamburger. They're not really eating those vegetables, right? They're eating just a tiny little bit, enough to make themselves feel better. Oh, and don't think for a minute this is your fault. It really is not. You have some instincts that are causing some problems. But the real issue here is that The food industry is significantly more evil and dangerous and manipulative than the tobacco industry ever was. They want you to eat more food. It serves them to sell you food that's low in nutrients and high in calories because it'll make you hungry. And then you'll buy more. It's good for profitability. And so when the pizza guy in the United States, and I know I have some Americans on the call, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but I just want to be really clear. In America, pizza is considered one of your 5 a day fruits and vegetables. That's what lobbying can do for you. I mean, honestly, pizza is a fruit and vegetable? I don't think so. So traditionally, humans have eaten upwards of 200 plant species a year. There are vitamins and minerals that we don't even know of, that we haven't even named, that are inside the various plants that are available to us. We don't even know what happens when we don't get them. What I'm saying to you is increase dramatically the quantity, quality, and variety of the vegetables that you eat in your life. Fruit. Increase the freshness of your fruit. Not canned fruit, not cooked fruit, fresh fruit. And here's one little rule for you. Eat it on an empty stomach. There's a long WildFit explanation for why you should do this. Right now, trust me on this. Eat it on an empty stomach. Fruit wants you to eat it. It just doesn't want to hang around in your stomach for very long, so let it pass through. Quality proteins. I know there might be some vegetarians on the call. We can have a longer conversation about that, and if you join us for WildFit, we definitely will. What I want to suggest to you is that if you're okay with eating animal products, then the very best thing you could do is eat a good quantity of the highest quality. And what does that mean? The highest quality is not beef. It's not pork. The highest quality is going to be natural meats like bison, buffalo, venison, moose, elk. And some of you are going, okay, now Eric, you've lost the plot. No, you can still have the other stuff. I'm just talking about at the very top, at the very highest quality, that's where you're going to get that from. And by the way, some of you are thinking, I can't get that. Yeah, you can. You can go to Whole Foods, most of you can get it. Or if you go to any local butcher, they can always get that kind of stuff. They just don't carry it on the shelf because not enough people are asking for it. And of course, we've got to have a lot of water. And what's really neat is if you get enough of this stuff, it cuts down your requirement for water. If you focus on getting much more of this before you eat the bad stuff, there are two things. One, you won't have enough room for a lot of the bad stuff. And two, your desire for the bad stuff will begin to go down. Now, here's the truth though. You need help. Most people will need some help to go through this. And there are there are 3 components to getting really good help around this. The one way is to have a peer group, to do this with people. It's significantly more effective to do something like this with a group of people than to do it on your own. The second thing is to have a reliable resource for information that you can trust about what you should be adding in and when you should be adding it and what you should be releasing and when you should be releasing it, so that you've got a program that you can really follow. This is really important. Whether it's our program or somebody else's, all I want to suggest to you is you dedicate to that program for the period of time. One of the reasons that people have such a difficulty with diet programs is they flip-flop from one to the other. Oh, I'm going to try Atkins. I'm going to try South Beach. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. No, stick with one and run the course of it. Make sure you're doing it properly so that you've got information that you can trust, that you can test for yourself. And then the third part is a structured accountability. And what I mean is basically having somebody that can guide you through the process and hold you accountable and help you achieve the goals that you want. And before we get to how we might be able to help you with that, I want you to think about the why. You know, I saw Muhammad Ali do this once, and I'm going to use it for a totally different purpose. Muhammad Ali said, you know, you think about your life. Here's your life, right? This is the span of your life. Now, imagine how old you are. How much of that is already gone, right? Okay, so, you know, here we are. That's how much life is left for me, let's say. Do it for yourself. How much is left? And then you go, how much of that are you going to sleep, right? Well, like about a third. And then how much of that are you going to work? This much. And then now you've got what's left, and that's kind of like your free time, right? Well, how much of that are you going to spend, you know, filling out tax returns, at the doctor's office, at the dentist? Life is really precious. And many times we don't recognize how precious it is until we're at the end. When we realize, wow, if I'd lived a little different, maybe I have a better quality of life at the end. By the way, this is not about living forever. It is not. Yes, absolutely, statistically, eating properly, taking care of yourself, you know, taking care of your body, absolutely, statistically, that's good for longevity. But even better than longevity, I want you to consider that the average person in the West today lives a really painful and expensive last 20 years of their life, involving surgeries and motorized carts and pills and IVs and all this kind of stuff. And it does not have to be that way. How do you want it to be? How do you want your life to be today? Do you want to stop being tired at 4 o'clock in the afternoon if you currently have that? Do you want your memory to be sharper and to fire more quickly? Do you want to wake up with zest? Like, you know that Christmas morning feeling you used to have when you woke up as a kid on Christmas morning? What if you could wake up every morning like that? Because you can. I just want you to understand that this is not about any one thing. It is about your entire experience of life is different when you have optimal health. Entire experience of life is different. The challenge that you have is twofold. One, you have instincts in your body, and those instincts evolved when the #1 cause of death among humans was starvation. So your entire system is designed not to starve. That's why when there's food available, you'll want to eat it, because I can't even imagine a bushman walking along and going, oh, look, there's some food, I won't bother eating it. They wouldn't do that because food was so unbelievably rare. In anthropology, there are these measurements of societies, and one of them is called calories per acre. So if you take a look at us, right? If any of you, I'm going to pick on California, right? If you live anywhere in California, you have literally billions upon billions of calories per acre, and you don't even have to travel for them because you're just going to go to Grubhub or Deliveroo and have those calories brought right to your house. No exercise needed, right? And then if you go to another level where you go to, say, a primitive agriculturalist in Africa who's growing some maize in their field, now they have even hundreds of thousands or millions of calories per acre. Then you can go to the Maasai, and the Maasai don't grow anything, but what they do is they have some livestock. So they might have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of calories per acre because they keep some livestock. Then you go to the Bushmen, which is how we lived for 99% of our history. Their calories per acre are infinitesimally small because, first of all, as hunters, the animals around know they hunt, so the animals are far away, so the calories per acre are really small. Plus, their calories per acre are not coming from agriculture, they're coming from foods they have to go seek and find, right? And so we live in a time now where it's available to us constantly, but our software was written in a time when food was really rare. And so we have an inclination to eat whenever it's available. We also have an evolutionary protection in us that when we eat sugar, it makes us hungry because fruit would come up on the tree and it'd be available for a few days, and you'd want to make sure you ate all of it. So you'd eat some, and then you get, how many of you have had this experience, right? Oh, look, there's some dessert there, or there's some candies, or there's something like that. I'll have a few of them. I'll have a few. And then you kind of walk away, and then you turn to your friend and go, do you want to get another one? Let's get another one. Well, that's not your fault. That's a built-in design of the body, because the way it works is you walk up to that tree 200,000 years ago and you eat some of those fruits, and then your tiny little stomach, because your stomach is normally supposed to be quite small, right, fills up pretty easily, and you start walking away, and then all of a sudden your body goes, sugar makes me hungry, and so you turn to your friend and go, do you want to go get another one? And here's the key. If you didn't go back and get another one, if you didn't do that, when winter came, you might starve. You needed to get those calories to prepare. Yet, we still have that software built into us today. That's problem number one. And problem number two is the food industry knows it. And that's why they take all the candy and all the sugar stuff and they put it in bright fruit-colored wrapping. They can appeal directly to your instincts. They can say, hey, look, there it is. You're wanting it, and it's available. They put sugar in food to stimulate your appetite. I want you, if you do nothing else after this webinar, just start looking at the ingredients on food. You are going to be shocked at how much sugar is in the food you're eating right now. Most of you will be shocked. Some of you, look, when I first started speaking about this stuff, when I first started reading about this stuff, 1991, 1992, it was earth-shattering. Now you're having some awareness. These things are out there, right? But here's an example. If I buy a jar of Ragu or Prego, or I don't want to pick on the brand names because I haven't checked them recently, but if I buy an average jar of, say, pre-made spaghetti or pizza sauce, what do you suppose the number 2 ingredient is? Sugar. Sugar. How many of you would go home to make a homemade pasta sauce, cut up some tomatoes, chop up a few onions, grind in the garlic, a little oregano, how about? Get it all together, and then pour in 2 tablespoons of sugar. Who would do that? Nobody. But the food manufacturing industry would, because 2 reasons. People's taste buds are so messed up by the sheer quantity of sugar in the world that things don't taste good unless they have sugar in them anymore. And reason number 2, sugar stimulates your appetite. The more you eat, the more profit they make. It's not your fault. It is your fault if you don't change it once you know all this stuff, right? So start paying attention. By the way, here's another one. Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, right? Kellogg Kellogg invented the 4 food groups. Why? So people would eat grain for breakfast. And here's the thing. What do you suppose the number 2 ingredient of Kellogg's Frosted Flakes is? No, it's not sugar. It's corn, because the number 1 ingredient is sugar. The number 1 ingredient is sugar. We have a major series of changes that we have to make around the world. And you know what? What's that old, the Gandhi expression? Be the change you want to see in the world. If you want to see healthcare in your country function, if you want to see the tax system in your country function, because so much of our tax money is going toward paying for the fact that people are being manipulated by the food industry. If you want to see this change happen, then start with yourself. If you want to live the highest possible quality of life, start with yourself. If you want to have the energy to achieve your goals, whatever it is, build a business, run a successful family, build and grow a successful family, have a fantastic marriage, have great hobbies. If you want all that stuff, then you need vitality and you need energy. And if you are planning on building yourself a great foundation of financial success, don't you want to be around to enjoy it? Make the changes. And so you can certainly do that with us. And the way we do it for you is really super effective. We do it over a space of 3 months. And so you join up with us, and over the space of 3 months, we guide you through a process. And here's how it works. In the first 2 weeks, the entire thing involves video training. So there's videos that you can watch all the time that are guiding you through the process. And you work with a live coach. And most of you were invited by one of our coaches in training right now. So you have the opportunity to do this with one of our new coaches who probably is a friend of yours or somebody you know. And so here's what's really cool. For the first 2 weeks, you have daily videos that are guiding you through very specific exercises that are going to help you to truly examine which of the hungers are triggering you to eat in certain moments and helping you to truly develop new associations to food. And you will find that there are foods that you currently regard as stuff that you absolutely love, that you would never want to live without. You will find that you get to a place where you become ambivalent about them, where you're like, you know what, I could take it, I could leave it. And that's where you want to be. If you could get to a place where you could take it or leave it, then you could be conscious of your food choice. Look, if one day you do want to have a donut, go ahead and have it, but don't have it just because it's there. And so what we do is a series of exercises in that first couple of weeks that will completely change your relationship with food. And then in the first 2 weeks, you're meeting with your coach every day, every weekday for 2 weeks to go through these exercises. And then after that, you'll meet with your coach every Friday and Monday. And every Friday and Monday, very briefly, they're just going to have a little conversation about various enhancements that we're going to make that week to change our focus and to change what we're focusing on from a food perspective. And so on the Fridays, we will announce a series of changes that we're making that week. You'll have the weekend to think about those changes, to optionally take them on or not. And then the changes will go live on Monday. And then from Monday, you will live with those changes. And again, you'll meet with your coach again on Friday. I can tell you something. Our percentage of effectiveness is mind-blowing to me. When we created WildFit, it was really an experiment. I remember very clearly doing the very first class, and Jackie, who's our general manager and a major part of getting this thing off the ground and getting WildFit to where it is today, we sat down the first time and she says, Eric, this is all fine what you want to do with people, but simply teaching about food, I mean, what about eating disorders? What about all this stuff she raised? And I said, you know what? Let's just run the program and see what happens. And we ran the program and we got unbelievably phenomenal results, because here's one of the things we found out is that, yeah, there are people that sometimes have eating disorders or compulsive disorders, but you know what's fascinating is those things are amplified by the food industry, by what's put in the food. And so when you start moving somebody into a very high nutrition diet, the weirdest thing is a lot of those other habits kind of just go away. And so it's really, really effective. We're running at above a 90% effectiveness rate with our clients that come into the system. I've never seen anything like that in the diet industry before. And so largely that's because it's built upon this idea of willpower. Oh, just give this up and give that up. No, we're going to help you to choose. We're going to help you to get to a place where you either want something or you don't want it. And then you're absolutely going to be in a place where you are able to make a decision consciously instead of unconsciously. Apparently, I didn't shut Skype off for some reason. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check in here to see if there were any questions that I can answer for you guys. And also, I've put a link up there for you, so that if you want to take a look at the different options you have for joining us and joining one of the coaches that invited you to this call, then if you click that link, it'll take you through their page. It'll tell you a little bit more about the program and give you some of the options for joining us. There are a variety of different ways. There's a very low-cost way where you don't work with a coach at all, and you can simply do it on video. And I'm happy for you to do that if you've got a budgetary constraint. If you do not have that budgetary constraint, work with a coach. The effectiveness is significantly higher, much better, because you have a coach and you are put on a team. So you, your team, and your coach are working together, and that's a very, very powerful force. So let's get to some of the comments here because I'm just about at time. Yeah, I mean, there's a great comment in here just reminding us that when you eat enough of the good stuff, what happens is your desire for the bad stuff starts to go away. That's pretty fascinating. The other thing is that somebody commented on here about is this issue of as you recognize that sugar is in so many things and you start to cut down your sugar intake, what's really neat is your taste buds come back and you start being able to taste things better. And the weirdest thing is there are things right now that you might not like the taste of, but that's because from a young age you were introduced to refined sugar, and so your taste buds have kind of been dumbed down. It's a little bit like you walk from the bright into a dark room, the bright sunlight, and you walk into the dark room, and all of a sudden it's like there's no light in there, there's no light, and then as your eyes adjust, there's light. Well, what's happening for most of us is that there are foods out there that are actually quite sweet, but we can't taste the sweetness because of the sugar that's in so many different things. All right, I ran out of time to take too many questions. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm first of all gonna send you guys, I think I have the ability, there it is. I think that I can push you guys out to the page where you can take a look at the different options we have. Equally though, go to the WildFit Facebook page, and today I will focus on answering any questions you have. You can either send them as a private message to the page, but I'd even prefer if you wrote it right on the wall, because that way if I answer your question, I might answer it for somebody else. And what I want to challenge you to do is leave this webinar by taking at least one action. And whether that action is that you've just decided you're going to start reading all the labels and looking where sugar is, or whether that action is that you're going to increase your quantity and variety of vegetables and fruit and quality proteins, or hopefully that action is to join us and let us hold your hand through this process, take one of those actions, move forward, make the change. You will be ever so grateful you did. Time will give you the perspective, and I'm telling you right now, I look at my life from 21 to today, the way that I live today, the opportunities that I have, the energy that I have, and I cannot tell you how unbelievably grateful I am that I made these changes, and I know that you will be as well. So thank you so very much for joining me for this. It's been a ton of fun. I've really enjoyed being here with you, and I know that I'm going to get to meet some of you guys in person one day, so I look forward to that. Until then, take care of yourself. Remember, the very, very best healthcare is self-care.